Hey y'all, what's up? My name's Angela, and today we're going to be talking about the books that I read in the month of January. Starting off, we have Raybearer by Jordan Ifueko. This book follows the main character Tarsai, who is born to kill the crown prince of Artsar. Her mother, who is only known as the Lady, sends her at a young age to the capital to compete with other children to become a part of the Crown Prince's Council, a really exclusive 11-member council held together by ancient magic. Throughout the book, Tarsai really struggles between her compulsion to kill and her desire to dictate her own fate. I would tag this book with found family, vibrant fantasy, and action-packed plot. So the Empire's culture and the magic system is based heavily around a combination of several West African cultures, and the resulting execution of the book is just so good. The plot is really fast-paced, and I think the storytelling is extremely efficient. And to me, at least, there was kind of an unexpected romance that I really enjoyed, and it didn't overtake from the vibrancy and the complexity of the plot. I gave this book 5 stars. The next book is Shipped by Angie Hockman. This book follows our main character, Henley Evans, who is a self-proclaimed workaholic who is determined to get the promotion at her cruise line company. The only problem is she has to go on a cruise with her only competition and her biggest work nemesis, Graham Crawford Collins. I would tag this book with Enemies to Lovers, Lifetime movie, and Career versus Love. So for a book focused heavily on traveling and seeing these really vibrant places, I feel like it really fulfilled my wanderlust that I've been having since social distancing. I think it's a really fun, flirty, light romance, kind of in the veins of The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. The main thing I didn't like about this book was definitely the ending. I thought it was pretty cheesy and a little bit unrealistic. Very satisfying, but it's kind of cringy. And if you're not a fan of explicit scenes in romance novels, this is mostly Fade to Black. I gave this book 4 stars. The next book I read was Local Star by Aimee. This is a polyamorous space opera, and it follows our main character Triz, who is a low-tier technician and is forced to work with her ex, Kahlo, to defend her space hub against invaders and to save her partner, Kasni. I would tag this book with LGBTQ+ rep, speculative sci-fi, and family drama. The biggest selling point of this book was definitely the writing style. I found it really engaging, and it definitely held me through from chapter to chapter. This book has a lot of great representation that you don't normally find in sci-fi, such as having queer relationships, genderless characters, and having normalized polyamorous relationships. The thing I didn't really enjoy about this book was definitely how much technical jargon there was with very little context. I felt like we're thrown into the world and you don't really get a grasp on what's going on until maybe a quarter of the way through, and for such a short book, you basically feel like you just get a grasp of what's going on and then the story's over. So I would want maybe like 100 more pages from this book to feel kind of really comfortable with the story. But overall, this is a really good way to taste test if you enjoy space operas, like the drama, the relationship, the high action of space operas. I think this is a really good short taste test for it. I gave this book 3 stars. Next, I read the entire Poppy War trilogy by R.F. Kuang, so The Poppy War, The Dragon Republic, and The Burning God. This series follows the main character Rin, a war orphan who manages to test into the most prestigious military academy in her country of Nakan. While she's at school, she discovers that she has the ability to harness these fabled powers from the gods. However, soon after, war breaks out, and Rin, along with her classmates, are thrown into battle and forced to fight for their lives and their freedom. I actually did a reading vlog of this series where I go more in depth of my views and thoughts on different parts of the book, so I'll have that linked. I would tag this book with having fantastical warfare, dynamic characters, and plot-driven. To me, this is a really intense series, but not necessarily of like the dark and bleak variety. Especially in the Poppy War, we have a lot of these moments of kind of dry humor and slightly kind of comedic dialogue that were really enjoyable to read. A lot of the plot threads of fictional countries are actually derived from real historical information from specifically the Sino-Japanese Wars, so you can see that reflected within the story itself. I think this book strikes a really good balance between practical warfare and this very surreal magic. Along with having very complex plot and character dynamics, there's a lot of overall themes and discussions around colonization, the ethics of warfare, and the degree to which sacrifices are okay for the greater good. I gave every book in this series a 5 stars, so I would highly recommend you check it out. The next book I read was Everybody Sees the Ants by A.S. King. This follows the main character Lucky, who has a very troubling life. He has a very absent father, kind of a dysfunctional immediate and extended family, and is basically the punching bag for his school's bully. His only escape is his dreams at night, where he tries to save his grandfather, who was a soldier during the Vietnam War, from the Laos jungles. Because this is a personal trigger as a reader, I want to lay out a few trigger warnings. So if you're not a fan of really intense bullying scenes containing both physical and verbal abuse, I would say either skip this book or go into it with great caution. I would tag this book with light magic realism, coming of age, and family drama. As is with most Anne King books, there's always this light magic realism, and especially within this book, I think the bridge between the dream world and the real world is done really well. In particular, this book has a really realistic portrayal of bad family dynamics with not a whole lot of drama. In fact, I feel like this family dynamic is pretty common among a lot of American families. What I also liked about it was that we see character growth not only from the main character, but from virtually every character that we come into contact with. So even the characters who are instrumental in helping Lucky grow to his final kind of metamorphosis, they also experience growth themselves. This book is definitely a heavier contemporary, but I think for people who can kind of relate to the topic or have personal experiences with what's going on in the book, it can on some level be comforting or inspirational. Overall, this is a really well executed, hard-hitting contemporary, and I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read was The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins, and I read this as part of Gabby Reed's book club, The Book Troop. So this is a retelling of Jane Eyre. At her job as a dog walker in this really affluent neighborhood, our main character Jane meets Eddie Rochester, who is a newish resident whose wife Bee died in a really mysterious accident. So though the two characters fall really quickly into a relationship, secrets from both Jane and Eddie start to catch up with them and really threatens to tear the relationship apart. I would tag this book with mystery suspense, social commentary, and unconventional love story. Honestly, this book was just so much fun to read. It was really quick. I think I read this mostly in one sitting. The mystery was pretty obvious even if you haven't read Jane Eyre, and I haven't read Jane Eyre, so speaking from experience here. There is a critique on class differences because Jane is not very well off and the people she comes into contact with are just ridiculously rich. And the critique isn't very subtle, but it's so entertaining because Jane is just so snarky in her head against all the people that she has to play nice with. For a lot of the key plot threads and things that happen in the book, I feel like you do have to suspend your disbelief. They're not realistic at all, and you could poke holes in this book's plot like all day long, but to me it was just really fun, and I've always enjoyed Rachel Hawkins' writing style, even from her Hex Hall series, so I would check this out if you're kind of looking for a fun mystery suspense book. I gave The Wife Upstairs 4 stars. The next book I read was The Shining by Stephen King. So this follows our main character Jack Torrance, who is looking for a fresh start and moves his family to the Overlook Hotel for a part-time job where he is the caretaker for the hotel during the off-season. However, sinister spirits in the hotel, as well as the isolated location, start putting the family in great danger. I would tag this book with slow build horror, better than the movie, and character study. So I watched the movie version before I read the book, and I would say that Jack's descent into madness is so much more clear and fluid in the book. There is a really good balance between these supernatural demons and real life demons, and throughout the book, it's almost hard to distinguish the lines between the two. I also like how there's more explicit involvement of the hotel and the spirits in the hotel, as well as Danny's magic within the book. There's just more clear descriptions. If you liked the kind of old-timey supernatural vibe from American Horror Story Hotel, I think you'll really enjoy The Shining. The biggest gripe I have with this book is we have another occurrence of the questionable ways that Stephen King has written black characters in his book. In particular, we have another appearance of the magical black character trope in Halloran. Halloran is basically like, he is the instrumental helper in helping Danny, and he kind of, at the snap of Danny's fingers, comes to rescue him. The way Halloran is written in the book, his position in life, his kind of devotion to Danny Torrance with no real connection, his almost subservient attitude plays a lot into these racial stereotypes and tropes that are often found with this magical black character trope in media and is often found in Stephen King's media. So I don't particularly enjoy it, and I wasn't even looking out for it, and it immediately stood out to me. So I would say that that's something that's probably the most unenjoyable part of the book. I do understand why it's one of the most beloved modern classic horror novels, just because it's so well crafted, like the plot itself and the character study, like just a look into how they evolve throughout the book stuck inside this hotel is really, really fascinating. I ended up giving The Shining 5 stars. The next book I read was Fever Dream by Samanta Schweblin, translated by Megan McDowell. We open with our main character Amanda, who is a young mother dying in a hospital clinic, and beside her is David, a young boy who is helping her recount her story of how she got to the position she's in. I would tag this with understated horror, social commentary, and surrealism. So the author is from Argentina, and this book is actually a commentary on the harmful agriculture chemical usage in Argentina. I would say this book was extremely unsettling, best read in one sitting, very slowly and with lots of rereads. The writing style is very interesting, it's very dialogue heavy, and it's pretty minimalistic. And I think the horror of it definitely comes from how realistic the effects on the people in the town where the pesticides are being used is. And because of the realism of it, it's very, very unsettling. While it's not really the type of horror that I enjoy, I definitely got a bigger message from this book. I gave this book 3 stars. Next is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. This follows Lucy and Josh, who are secretaries at a publishing company, and their rivalry is basically the stuff of office legend. So when a chance for promotion to an executive position comes up, both of them are willing to play whatever games necessary to win. I would tag this with enemies to lover, quirky, and steamy romance. So this is actually a reread, and this was not a good reread. Sally Thorne's quirky writing style was super grating on my nerves this time through. And I think what I really liked about it the first time was the tension and the banter between Lucy and Josh, as well as like the family drama. Like those elements really carried the Hating Game on the first read through. For me, this time through, the family drama at the end was probably the only thing I really, really enjoyed. Since this book is from Lucy's point of view and Sally Thorne's writing style is basically Lucy's thoughts, from her perspective, their progression into, like, from enemies to romance was very jerky and strange. Like, it just kind of felt like all over the place, and then suddenly they were in love. So I would definitely put the blame on the writing style more than the plot progression. The banter was still good, you know, as it always is. It was just a little weird this time because the writing style again. And I could definitely see why I didn't like 99% Mine as much as The Hating Game, just because that banter between Lucy and Josh that was in The Hating Game just wasn't as alive in 99% Mine. I gave The Hating Game 3 stars. The next book is Homebody by Rupi Kaur. This is Rupi Kaur's third collection of poetry focusing on self-image and self-love, her own personal history, as well as current events. I would tag this book with modern poetry, hard-hitting topics, and hit or miss. So again, like Rupi Kaur's previous poetry collections, I feel like this is a very mixed bag. Some of the poems, even if I didn't personally relate to the topic, I felt were really well crafted. But that was only like a handful. Most of the poems to me felt very casually put together. Even if the topics were really important and emotional and hard-hitting, it just felt like the execution was a bit blasé. In this book, the art style was slightly different compared to Milk and Honey. I didn't read her second collection of poetry, so I don't know about the art style there, but I really enjoyed seeing how the art represented the poems. I usually don't rate poetry, so no star rating, but if I had to compare it to Milk and Honey, I would say I enjoyed it about the same. The next book is The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James. This book is told in 2 timelines. So in 2017, we follow Carly, who travels to the small town of Fell, New York, to look into the mysterious disappearance of her Aunt Vivian. In the other timeline, it's 1982, and we follow Vivian, who escapes from her small Midwest town and ends up in Fell, New York, where she starts working at the Sundown Motel. While working there, she discovers a lot of mysteries and secrets surrounding both the motel and the town. I would tag this book with true crime thriller, supernatural, and atmospheric. The plot in this book really has the rhythm of a true crime TV show, which I feel like might speak to the author's background working in television. I read this book as an audiobook, and I personally feel that it's better as an audiobook just because then you get this story in the format of almost a true crime podcast. The thing I didn't really enjoy about this book was the ending. It was kind of cut a little bit short. It was wrapped up really neatly, but it felt a little bit kind of unrealistic. So I guess if you're a fan of very neat kind of mysteries and thrillers with not a lot of plot threads left kind of undone, this is a good book. I gave The Sundown Motel 4 stars. The last book I read was Black Enough, Stories of Being Young and Black in America, edited by Aimee. This is an anthology written by a lot of well-known Black authors telling the diverse stories of Black teens. The stories discuss a lot of topics like growing up as a Black teen in America, LGBTQ+ issues, cultural ties and traditions, as well as social injustices. I would tag this book with diverse genres, own voices, and coming of age. I think this anthology is especially good for high school and college age readers. There's so many genres within the book. We have sci-fi, a lot of contemporary romance, and even a cowboy romance at one point. Some of my favorite stories were Morning Color May Fade by Leah Henderson, The Ingredients by Jason Reynolds, Samson and the Delilahs by Tochi Onibuchi, Woe by Rita Williams Garcia, and The Trouble with Drowning by Danielle Clayton. So those were all the books I read in the month of January. Be sure to let me know your favorites or least favorite books that you read in January, and maybe what you're planning to read in the month of February. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please click like, and if you want to see more, click subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.